All right. Hello, welcome back to Lowport
Good
episode.
morning.
Tim and I, in the first couple here, have talked about kind of, what is practical shooting, what are some of the different disciplines you can get into, a little bit on how to like practice and get good. But half or more of the fun of this podcast is, I think, going to be talking about, our actual experiences day to day. And that's going to
Yeah,
give people a great flavor of what like this sport is actually all about. And so yesterday, you and I both shot the same match. We call it the city match here, but the club is called Rio Grande Practical Shooting Club. So a USPSA club does matches on the first and third Saturday out here. And yeah, it was a pretty fun match. I thought we had good stages. There were five. You and I think both performed pretty good, and I think we should talk through like what our match day was like.
absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I had a really good match. Um, I don't get an opportunity to shoot very many local matches in New Mexico because of, like my travel schedule and stuff. So I've had this entire month of January off to kind of like rest and reset, get ready for my training year and things.
Sure.
Yeah, so getting to shoot the local match yesterday. So I chose to shoot, or am choosing to shoot, my single stack division gear, which is also my IPSC classic division. So in single stack or classic division, I am limited to very, very low capacity. So I was shooting my 10 round 9mm 1911 pistol yesterday. So all of the reloads were necessary. But I'm doing
Hmm.
that because I'm preparing for hopefully a really good showing in 2 weeks at the US Extreme Open, which is like a 30 stage 4 day match in Florida. And then also for that, in preparation for US IPSC Nationals in April and the USPSA National Championships in single stack division in October. So I'm trying to make a run at earning a slot for the IPSC, what we call the IPSC World Shoot, which is like the World Championships, which will be coming up in 20. God, when's the next one going to be? 2026, whatever it is, 2025, 2026. So I'm that's kind of like my future preparation for. So that's why I chose the gear I shot yesterday. I know you were shooting open division with your
Oh yeah.
awesome space gun with a mounted optic and 30 round magazines and
this big bad boy. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, people who say you can't buy skill are lying. You definitely can. So understand. Even that said, though, so open. Um, Experienced folks know all the divisions, but for people who aren't so experienced, there's different divisions.
Yep,
So they're basically gated by the kinds of gear you have. So if you're shooting a Glock that's from the factory, you're not competing against people with guns like this, at least not directly.
correct.
Um, so open is basically the most permissive division. Everything goes. You buy crazy custom made guns with compensators and ports and frame mounted optics that basically make shooting as easy, and 1 pound triggers that basically make shooting as easy as it possibly can be,
Right.
and 30 round magazines and stuff like that. And so I've recently switched to that division after shooting primarily limited in USPSA for a long time.
Hmm.
And it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. That said, though, it's really impressive, Tim. I noticed the last couple local matches you have been able to shoot here. You're right there on me in open, shooting your single stack gear. So that's very,
Ryan.
honestly, quite annoying. But good for you. And that I think that shows like, so you're a professional shooter, a legitimate like national level competitor,
Mhm.
grandmaster, the first grandmaster in the new limited optics division in the country.
Yep.
I My highest classification was M class in limited, so I was a master. In
Mhm.
open right now, I'm A, and after this weekend's match, will actually be a legitimate A, not one by default. But that shows that it's not just about gear, right? It's about how you run
Sure.
that stuff. Um,
Sure. I mean, it
but
definitely puts me at, I don't want to say it like a, but it does put me at a handicap or a disadvantage, shooting a 10 round, 1911 with iron sights against a 30 round, compensated, dot, open gun pistol. Obviously there's, it's like, it's bringing it's racing a Chevrolet against a Ferrari, or a Yugo against a Formula One car kind of thing. But I mean, yeah, the great thing about it is I'm enjoying the push again. Like in order to try to keep up with guys like you and Tim Proctor, who, like you guys were super, super close in the points yesterday's match, to be just nipping on your guys' heels too, with a 10 round gun too. Like that's why I said just, earlier, like, man, I had a really, really good match yesterday. So
Oh yeah.
my goal going into the match was try to shoot all the points. Like I'm going to try to shoot as many points as I can. I don't necessarily want to focus on speed. I want to focus on consistency of execution and points. And because of that, and keeping that goal at the forefront of what I was really trying to accomplish yesterday, it worked. It's like consistency is kind of the master of what we're trying to do in the sport, is just be as consistent as possible and minimize mistakes. So I had to, obviously everybody's going to have mistakes. It's, did those mistakes snowball into serious things, or was I able to kind of minimize the mistakes and not let them get into my head and keep, and just keep plugging along and be consistent? And yeah, I totally did. So all in all,
Well,
yesterday was a huge win for me. Just as far as from a sake of consistency, I think I shot 108 alphas and only 16 Charlies for the entire match. So no penalties,
wow.
no foot
I,
faults, no
I did
misses,
more
no
Charlies on one stage.
and no deltas. So like I
Yeah.
I really put points at the forefront and did a really good job at adhering to, and like from the mental game aspect, that's really hard sometimes to do. And
Oh
so
yeah.
for me yesterday, I felt on top of the world. Like coming off that match, I finished, I want to say almost 98%, like 97 point something percent of you and
Extremely
Tim,
close.
shooting open guns, and I did it with my little low cap pistol. So
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. You've been having such good local performances. It's got to build your confidence up tremendously for that big IPSC match coming up. So
it does, it does.
I know I'll be watching and rooting for you, buddy.
Awesome. I
Um,
appreciate that. So tell me
but
about your
yeah,
match.
yeah. So my match. So it's funny, you mentioned the mental game. I think that's so important, and especially once you start to get serious about that, it makes more of a difference than you would think. I think for the so many years that I've been in this sport, uh, I think quickly I built up pretty good like technical physical skills, but my mental
Mhm.
game always lagged behind. And a recurring mistake that I would see myself making, especially emphatically manifested at major matches, was when I started making mistakes that I would allow that to snowball in my mind. Like maybe I'm doing something horribly wrong and I need to at this match fix it. And so I would change how I was doing my grip. I would think about how I was doing the trigger instead of just trusting the skills that I had, and letting any mistakes roll off my shoulder. Because you're going to make mistakes when you're riding that ragged edge of speed and
Mhm.
accuracy that you have to do in USPSA. And so I've been really proud, and or local matches, I should say, are where I am honing this mental game and those resiliency, I guess you could call them, skills. And over the last couple months, I've finally, I think, started to figure that out. And
Most
so this
definitely.
match was a good example of that too. Um, on the very first stage, I shot it pretty good, but I ripped a no shoot that went both ways. It was an alpha and a no shoot on one of the first targets. But I was shooting aggressively, and I didn't care about that. That wasn't a big deal. The stage still worked out okay. On the next stage, I started out blazing and then had a really bad magazine problem that put me probably, oh, it was like a 60 or 50% stage at the end of it. So I lost probably 80 match points or something on that stage or close to that. And so that sucks. But I didn't let that error mess me up. So after that, I was able to just go and shoot my first master level classifier in open, which was great. And then on the stage after that, I shot the highest hit factor stage I've ever shot, which was like a 17 on the super hosey stage that you designed. So thank you very much for that, sir. Um, so that was really cool. And there have been a couple matches, and that allowed me to like have a pretty good match finish at the end. I finished even with the malfunction, like 99.6 or something percent of Tim. So I almost took it even with that, and it just
Yeah.
shows that it's never over. You just got to take it one stage at a time, and
That's the
not doubt
hardest
yourself.
thing to overcome at any match
Yeah,
is, like, especially like with your with your magazine malfunction on the one stage, it kind of puts you down. It's like a lot of people would just be like, immediately they kind of throw their hands up. They're like, well, it's over. I guess I'm not going to win this one. And so then they kind of shoot with this like very little care or caution for the rest of it. They figure like, well, my match is screwed. I'm just going to, never mind. I can't, I can't ever get past that kind of thing. And mentally,
Yep.
it just absolutely hoses them, and, the great thing to see yesterday was like, you didn't let that bother you. It was just like, well,
Mm-mm.
mistakes are going to happen. A bad stage is going to happen. It's how you pick yourself up off the ground, off a bad stage, and dust yourself off and get back on the horse again and keep riding. And that
Exactly.
it showed. I mean, it like you were like, okay, you went from a 50% finish because of a malfunction. It's out of your control. But instead of letting it control you mentally, turned into like you absolutely dusted everybody on, two stages later,
Yeah, that
you
was a
know,
20% stage win on
it's
the match.
huge,
So I was like, hell
huge,
yeah.
and on that particular stage, that's like, that's a 30 round 150 point stage. I mean, you trump back like 40 some odd match points just on that one stage alone. That's huge. So it's you see big swings like that back and forth all the time. So like Josh said, it's not over till it's over, and you got to approach a match as a marathon, not a sprint. Like everybody would love to win every single stage, but I have seen people like win national championships and never win a single stage. Not have a single stage victory, but over the course of like say 18 stages that makes up a national championship, win the overall national title by finishing just consistent. They were
Yeah.
top 5 or top 8 on every single stage. So that tells you that you can make mistakes and everybody's going to make mistakes, but don't let those mistakes like snowball into terrible things. You learn to minimize them and you learn to just kind of clear your head mentally and stay the course. And
Well,
I think
yeah.
for both of us yesterday, that was a huge win.
Well, just as you said, like that's all exactly right. And for better or for worse, I've been given the opportunity to test those mental skills at recent matches. So, like at the last Del Norte match, which is the match I run, um, uh, it's always tough when you're running the match. It's just I set that up the day before. It's hard to get into the mental game. So, I
100%. Match
I
directing and
think
shooting at a high level is impossible almost.
yeah, and so not to make an excuse or anything, but like I was messing up at that match. And I shot a mic on the first stage. On the next classifier stage, I kept my thumb up and I was shooting my old open gun, but it has a low thumb racker here and it just peeled my thumbnail right back on the classifier stage. So that messed me up pretty good. The next stage I shot a mic. So I was like way down on points. And then Jeremy Kirschbaum, who's a local shooter, open shooter, so my direct competitor, who's been getting really good in the last couple months. He
Yes, he has.
was he was pulling ahead of me on the match, and I was like, "This is not good." And so on the fourth stage of this 5 stage match, I was shooting it pretty good, and then like took 5, if not 6 shots to knock down a popper on one stage, and was way off the pace. And I was just like, "This this is fucked. Like this is not going good. I don't think I can win." But it's not over till it's over. We had one more stage. Thankfully, it was like a 30-point stage or something like that, just like yesterday.
Mhm.
And I was just like, I'm just going to crush my process. I'm going to approach it, I guess, aggressively, but basically, I'm just going to try to pull the trigger when I see that dot on an alpha zone.
Yep.
And I did that, and it was a lot like yesterday. I think it was close to a 20% stage win. I was way faster on pace. Uh, Jeremy was slower, and he ended up shooting his first mic of the match on that stage. And
He did.
so for me, it's just a local match, and I won by like 0.3% or something like that. But that was a tremendous mental victory because I was in charge of my mind and my process, which has been my downfall in so many matches in the past. And so, that's on the very first episode we were talking about like what shooting has done for you in your life. I didn't do a lot of competitive stuff when
Mhm.
I was like a kid, adolescent, young adult, even. And these kinds of lessons, they count for something in your life beyond sport, beyond shooting. And it's just
Absolutely, they do.
it's
Like
just
how to
cool to
overcome
like,
adversity,
yeah,
how to not let mistakes or, I don't know, bad things in life like completely overwhelm you.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's like, you're the master of your mind. It's like, have you ever read the book The Art of Racing in the Rain? Like, life sucks sometimes, but it's all about how you approach it. So um, yeah. And then even at the New Mexico sectional, which is a major match that happens here, I was shooting a lights out match there. That was back in October. On stage 7 of 9, all of a sudden I almost zeroed a stage, and I didn't know what the hell was happening as I was shooting it, because I draw the gun, shoot 2 shots, go to a partial target, shoot a no shoot, shoot a mic, all called. Finally put 2 on paper. I'm like, what the hell is going on? This is so bizarre. Get all flustered because the shots aren't going where I'm looking. End up, besides all the penalties, incurring more because I'm flustered at that point, and I forget some targets. So I get FTSAs and a shitload of mics added onto that. And, yeah, it was literally like 5% stage finish there. And so I went from winning that match overall and an open to, I think I ended up like 8th or 9th in open, which
mhm.
sucked. But what happened was, I realized after that stage, my optic mount came loose, and that whole thing was like rattling, like it had
uh,
centimeters of travel. So it just catastrophically came loose. So
yeah,
that sucked, and I was pissed. But fortunately, my buddy Clay from Utah was there. He lent me a super cool Infinity to shoot for the last 2 stages. And I actually ended up getting like a stage win with a borrowed gun on one of those
it's
stages.
awesome.
And
That's
so,
got to
yeah,
feel good.
I pulled out the match and made it as good as I could have. All I needed on that stage where my optic mount came loose to win would have been a 70% finish, which would have been my by far the lowest on the match. So I think like this is a good example of where the outcome might not be exactly what you want, but if you just have your process locked in and you don't let yourself get flustered, sooner or later it's going to work out for you. And so I walked away from that match pretty happy, actually, even though I didn't get the outcome I wanted, because the outcome is a byproduct of the process. And if you have the right process, which for me was always shortcoming in the mental game, I think I'm fixing that. And so that was a huge win for me. But anyways, we talked a lot about my local matches recently and mental game struggles. What else about the local match this past Saturday was good or bad for you?
So really for me, like my goal wasn't to like just obviously, you like to burn things down. I want to go as fast as I can, but like I said, the wanting to
Picked
kind
the
of
wrong
overcome
division
the
for that, buddy.
sensation of like I have to go fast was more about like I have to score as many points as I can, right? So
Yeah,
just because of the scoring and playing the scoring to my advantage was, like, hey, I've got to shoot a little more carefully. I know I have to because I'm shooting low capacity. Like I have to be accountable. So
right.
just maintain the course, so to speak. So I was the match for me was really fun. The big part of it was for me was I created a couple of the stages. I designed stages 1 and 2 the day before and went out and set those up. So for me, my creativity juices have been flowing lately as match director and as stage designers. I like to challenge all the shooters. I like to create stages that are obviously not only just interesting for me to shoot, but for other people to shoot as well. Stage one,
Th-
I never do hoser stages like 32 round or 30 round. Targets are no further away than
we
like
leave
7 yards.
that to Wayne Goodart here in New Mexico.
Exactly, exactly. And Wayne is the master of those, right? So,
Yes.
but I wanted to put something kind of just down and dirty and fun, like super high hit factor, just to give give people the opportunity to just pull the trigger fast. But the
Thank you.
stage two, the second stage was what I would consider kind of a like an IPSC inspired, kind of an international kind of rules type of stage. I like stages with lots of options. Options meaning like there's more than one way to shoot the stage effectively and efficiently. And it was really cool. Like Wayne got his big overhead camera thing out and set it up. and recorded, I think, just about everybody on his squad shooting that stage. And it was neat. Like, I think he posted on Facebook last night of like 8 or 9 different shooters. And the great thing is no two shooters shot the stage the same way. And so, like, for me as a like as a stage designer, that's a win. When you create a stage that opens itself or lends itself to that many options, you're like, man, that's really cool. I didn't even think of somebody going and shooting it that direction and that direction and that way. And that was really cool for me. So, like, as a
That
stage
that was the
designer,
most that was the most fun one to do the stage plan for on the whole match.
I
So
appreciate that. I
yeah, I
appreciate that.
agree. Also, I like that you designed two for that match and they were back to back because you taught me a good lesson about shooting there because I went and I shot stage one, which was the super high hit factor hosey one, went
Hmm.
absolutely bananas on that. Probably shot just about as many Charlies as I did alphas, but still like crushed the stage with open major scoring.
Right.
But then instead of approaching stage two as like a totally separate challenge with like more spread out targets, probably half the hit factor or less than the
Hmm.
previous stage, I shot it way too loose. So I took a lot on the move, especially with an open major gun, but I was way too loose with like the sight picture how I'd accept on those targets as I was moving. And you totally goaded me into it because they were just far enough, like 12, 15-yard range, and you're taking them on the move where you're like, I can hit that easily. But way too many Charlies got dropped. And on that stage, like Ross, I think he slightly beat me by like 200ths or something of a hit factor, shooting limited minor because he was like 2 seconds slower, but he only dropped 3 Charlies on the whole thing. And I was like, that is a super good lesson about how to approach stages of like different hit factor and layout. And so every stage, like we said it before, is its own unique challenge, and you got to take it one stage at a time. And the approach for stage one was totally different for what I needed to do on stage two. And with hit factor scoring, all that comes out. And so that was a super good lesson, and it was cool to see those two things right next to each other.
I appreciate that. I really liked so you designed stage 3, which was in bay 2, which was like on paper, so simple, right? It was like, oh, it's
Yeah.
18 rounds. This is easy, except that you son of a gun, right? So, like, you had basically two positions with kind of a third, like a sidestep kind of needed to reach one of the targets. It was kind of tucked in behind a barrel, with a 20-yard or 21 or 22-yard mini popper out to the left side. And there was another popper that was about 17 yards or so straight down range. So it lent itself to basically, if you shot it either left to right or right to left, you kind of just you went to one or two of the different locations. So it's kind of a two position stage where you either shot 7 rounds at the beginning and 11 rounds at the end, or 11 rounds at the beginning and 7 rounds at the end. And so, me being a low cap shooter where I only have like one
Sorry.
round in the chamber and a 10-round magazine, I was like, well, to avoid a standing reload, I have to go 1 for 1 and run the gun dry, and then do a slide lock reload to the 7 round array there towards the end. So, and this being our last stage of the match, this was the bay we ended on. Like, I'd had such a good match going into that stage. Like, it's really hard to kind of stave off like, in the back of your mind, you're just like, man, do I play it safe? I need to play it safe. I'm going to go ahead and just do a standing reload and do, and break that 11 rounds up into something a little more digestible, but then you got the demon on your shoulder too, going, just go for it, Tim, do 11, you can, and it's so it was really hard to kind of juggle that performance. And so I chose to, like, no, you know what, I know I can go 1 for 1 on that 17-yard steal. I know I can shoot to 11 on that first. I'm going to do the slide lock reload, and I'm going to come into that last position, and I'm just going to shoot. And so I think I dropped 4 Charlies on that, two being on the partial target on the far left side.
Hmm.
And I looked to a spot that just allowed me kind of central location on Brown. Bam, bam, two really close Charlies that were just about a half an inch above the A zone on that. And I had one extra shot on the steal there towards the end. So I shot to 8, but my first 11 rounds, it was like, two and two, the steel, and like turned it up. And I think I finished third overall on that stage,
Nice.
shooting low cap, kind of going to I'm going to turn it up to 11 on this stage and just shoot. And, I was uh, very confident in my ability and very confident and just like, hey man, just trust it. Like you've been shooting good all day. Don't let that stupid steel get into your head, and don't let yourself like second guess your ability. Just shoot. And
Bingo.
it worked out to be kind of one of my better stages. I say
Oh,
better stages,
good.
all the stages pretty well, but that could have been a disaster factor for many people. And instead I was just like, just execute. That's all. And so
Well,
it's
I'm
good.
I'm glad it challenged you and wasn't untenable in low cap, at least single stack
No,
minor.
I liked it because it was
But
like I said, you just walk up to it and you're like, oh, this is easy. It's 18 rounds and it's two positions. But then when you look at it again, you're like, wait just a dang minute. It's
yeah, it's just hard
damn, I have
enough.
to go to 11 on
Yeah,
this. So
it's just hard enough. Yeah, it's not like some people will just make insanely hard targets and be like, "Oh, this makes a fun stage." But
I disagree,
it's
right?
yeah, it's the interplay of uh, pushing you to, like, if you're low cap, the magazine limit, having
Right.
just enough hard targets, but then you have to be able to shift gears and rip on some close stuff too. It's like
Yep.
that balance, incorporating all skills, or at least a reasonable subset of the skills you encounter in practical shooting, is
I
what
love
makes it a
that
fun
stuff.
stage.
And it's
Yeah,
and as a match director, or even just as a stage designer, there is definitely an art to it. I've learned, or should I say, I am learning. And obviously each stage designer too, like has their enjoyment, right? Like, so you mentioned Wayne Goodart, and Wayne, man, he loves to pull the trigger. So you always know with Wayne what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of close hoser stuff. You're going to get a lot of rounds down range on a Wayne stage, and those are fun too. And Wayne's really good and creative about like kind of tucking targets behind things and making you kind of think about like how you're going to shoot this high round count stage. But like I said, like I'm not a big hoser, like 32 round state, big field courses with a lot of, just fast pressing the trigger. It's just not really my forte. I don't really find those particular stages myself as very interesting. So I like stages with lots of options, where like the the targets are just difficult enough to challenge people, but at the same time they're also easy enough that like any given target, any shooter of any skill set has the ability to be able to hit that target. It's how comfortable do you feel doing it on the move, or do you post up to shoot it, or those
yeah,
throttle control changes, like aggressive to very controlled to do you shoot on the move or do you post up to shoot, and giving the shooter like sprinkling a couple of open targets out there someplace too. And what I mean by open targets, I mean like targets out in the open where you can utilize your skill sets to blend positions together and things. I always find very intriguing, where
yeah. I
well,
think
somebody just walks up to it and they don't just have that automatic thought of like, well, I'm just going to shoot it this way because that's the only way to shoot it. Where they really have to like, wait, do I go left first? Do I go right first? Do I go down range? Do I go up range? What do I do? And like when you hear the chatter on the squad and everybody's kind of got like, hey, Josh, what do you think about this? And hey, Tim, what do you think about this? And hey, Ross, it's like I like those conversations that we have kind of in between when like as a stage designer, you're like, yep, I've done my job well. When the discussion is like, there's not just one way to shoot it. So, and that's pretty cool.
100%. And I think it was Kenny Terry, who's a insanely good GM level shooter out of Utah. I think he
Absolutely.
expressed it really well. I'm pretty sure it was him. So sorry if I'm remembering this wrong, but he said like the best stage designs give people the opportunity to separate themselves. So you
Yep.
can shoot it conservatively, post up on those targets, gather points, or you can take a risk, shoot things on the move, be aggressive, and maybe you F it, but maybe you also win by 10 or 15% or something like that by being insanely
Exactly.
aggressive. And the best stages give you the opportunity to do both. Hoser stages
100.
are fun, but everybody's going to shoot it the same way, right? So that's yeah. So I think Kenny summed that up really, really well.
Yep, I agree.
Um,
I agree.
but yeah, so let me ask you another question about stage three. So I think my maybe stage design style is I make things more like what I've never shot an IPSC match, but I think my style is more like IPSC, like a little bit more movement, little bit higher shooting challenge, more emphasis on transitions between targets and positions and stuff like that.
I would agree with that.
Um, yeah, and so I think although it was a short stage, stage three was a good example of that. And for low cap, it pushed you to a hard point because you had to shoot to 11 in one position, right? So there was no opportunity for makeup, and you went for it. So you have a major IPSC match coming up. Would you have done the same thing if you saw that stage at like this IPSC Nationals match? Or would you have
You
shot it
have to.
differently?
I would have. I would have absolutely. So, um, because again, the risk versus reward. It's like, well, okay, I can run, I can shoot to slide lock and shoot to capacity, but and it's high risk, but the reward is exponentially greater, right? So if I go 1 for 1, which I fortunately did, going 1 for 1 on everything on that, I mean, like I said, I ended up finishing third overall against like everybody else in the match was a high cap shooter, and I did it with having to do a reload in there too. So um, when the all the cards are on the table, so to speak, at a major match, whether it be in nationals or whatever, like you're always kind of balancing that, like, okay, is it worth it to to run at a hot, at like absolute maximum speed or maximum capacity, or like what is the risk versus reward? Now, granted, had that say, let's say you'd push those mini poppers out another 10 yards. So let's say maybe that first mini popper around the between the barrel and the wall there on stage three would have been at, let's say, 30 yards. And that other mini popper would have been at like 35 yards to 40 yards. I probably would have said, you know what? I trust my ability. However, if I'm going to make that transition to that, it's going to take, let's say, a second of time to refine the sights to at least to that. I may as well throw a reload in there as well, because the opportunity to miss that target becomes so much greater on one shot. I'm probably going to go ahead and just stick a reload in it and play it just a little safer, so that you're not doing a reload surprised, and doing a standing reload there when you thought you were going to go 1 for 1. And if I'd have gotten beat, like if somebody else is like, nope, I'm going to go 1 for 1, and they do it, then you gotta have to kind of learn to take the good from the
Yeah.
bad on that, right? I'd have been like, I'm not going to quite take the risk on this particular stage. Maybe I'll shuffle that risk versus reward somewhere else. So
The,
I might have played the game, or made that gamble just a little bit different
it
depending
might
on
come down to where that stage is occurring in the match for you, right? Like if that's a day
exactly.
one stage, you might lay up a little bit. If
Yep.
that's day three and you need to gain 10 points to win the
Yeah, and
match, you're probably
that's
going to
there's
run
a
that
prime
risk. Yeah.
opportunity for that to happen, right?
Yeah.
So if I need 10 points to win, and this is a place where I can capitalize on gaining 10 or 15 match points on it, all I need to do is just adhere to the process. Like, nope, I'm going to take a little bit more time to aim just a little harder at that steel, press the trigger, and move on. So and
And
it's
that pulls it right back to a good stage gives you the opportunity to separate yourself. Because if
absolutely.
that last stage of your major was a hoser, well, I guess just run faster, right? Like
And I
what else?
like this.
So
Right. And
yeah,
that's the same thing. I mean, hoser stages could be the same way. Like I shot
yeah,
stage one with only two Charlies. I could have turned it up a little bit and probably shot a little bit faster each position, and maybe risked a few more points to gain a little bit more reward on time. But, overall, I was still like that was our one, two, three. That was our third or fourth stage of the match for me, and I was already on a pretty good tear of like, staying mentally focused on points, points, points. I didn't want to fall into the trap of like, okay, this is just a go fast one. I need to just hose it down. It became like, no, I need to adhere to, like what my conviction was coming into this match, which was points. So
right.
don't get lost in the sauce trying to just absolutely burn it down. And I mean, I did well. I did very
like
well in
I
the
did between 1 and 2 at this local.
right,
Yeah.
right. So I think I
Which
had the
is the
right
whole
mindset.
matchcraft kind of thing beyond
Right,
like stagecraft. Like, how do I approach this correctly?
exactly. So no, I thought the match yesterday was really good. It was great to see this being the what is this? This was the second match for Rio Grande
Yeah,
for the month. But we had a beautiful day yesterday. Slight, just a little bit of clouds or whatever. No wind hardly at all, which is crazy for Albuquerque this time of the year. But I think the temperatures were in like the mid 50s for the day, which was
it was lovely.
beautiful. And for the like second match of the year, I think we ended up with, I think we had 39 or 40 registered, I think is what Jeremy said. And we had 37, I think, shoot the match. So, which was that was a critical win, as far as like for the match and for the club. So I would love to see, like I said, by like my personal goal, hopefully to get people involved in the sport and start having at least 45 to 50 shooters show up almost every, continuously at both the Del Norte match as well as the city range match. I think the city can easily support that, and why we don't is just beyond me. And I think a lot of it is because we don't have these outlets, like the podcast now that we've created, and inviting people and showing people where to go and things like that. I think is going to be hopefully critical to future success of the state.
Well, I hope it helps because this is such a fun game, and I think more people ought to give it a try. Like we've
Absolutely.
harped on, great people, great experiences. It's just a fun time. Um, but yeah, when you submit a match to USPSA, because all the scores go online, classifiers
Mhm.
get logged, everything gets published. They ask you recently now. They say, was your facility at capacity? Like, was it full of people, or could you have done more? And for Del Norte, I'm like, no, like we had 30, 40. Our best matches have been 50 people when we first started, and the weather was good.
Mhm.
And it was summer, so people's kids were, well, actually, I guess that would make it bad for kids being out of school, but whatever. I think the weather is the driver. But Del Norte could easily have 80 people there.
Oh
They've
yeah.
got like 8 or 9 berms down there, and so there's no reason we couldn't grow.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and I think the city range is even easier for a lot of people to reach. So I think 50 is actually a conservative goal, and we could push beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Baby steps, but we're trying.
baby steps. Yeah. And part of that too is I think we can't have 32 round stages every stage because that just makes the round count too much. I
Right.
think for most people, if they can show up to a match with 150 or maybe 200 rounds, that's affordable to do once a month or so.
Absolutely. And not every stage
Otherwise,
needs
it's
to be 32 rounds. Like I said,
right.
I like 16 to 24, 25 round stages that like make you think. Like I said, they give you options and they're creative and there's yeah, like they're challenging in their own right. I think are way more interesting to me than just like, okay, I came to shoot 300 rounds and I'm going to shoot 300 rounds no matter what kind of thing. So, but again,
Yeah,
every stage designer, every match kind of has its own flavor, and I think we've done a really good job over the last couple of years, especially in the matches that we have in New Mexico, of kind of giving everybody a sprinkling of each person's kind of creativity too, which is good.
100%. Yeah. Well, I guess that was our match on Saturday. Any closing thoughts on that?
Um, my only closing thought is, man, if things like this interest you and you've not yet tried it, come out. Like we would love to, like I know myself and Josh and Ross and a lot of the guys that we've kind of named by name here too are super helpful and want to get people involved in the sport and get you out to a match. So come on out, man. It's going to be it'd be a great time.
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of fun for sure. All right,
Definitely.
Tim. Well, thanks for talking through this past Saturday with me, and
Absolutely.
catch you on the next one, buddy.
You bet. I'll talk to you soon.
And good luck at IPSC.
Thanks. Bye
Bye.
guys.